They looked like humanitarian trucks, 47 of them, lined up quiet, almost forgettable. No flags, no flashing lights, no sirens, just crates, canvas covers, and paperwork stamped for delivery. But when security forces opened the first one, everything changed. Inside weren't medicines. There were no blankets, no food. What they found was a war in waiting rifles, grenades, rocket launchers, 47 trucks packed with weapons meant for a destination that no one officially acknowledged. And while the world saw the seizure, the real story was never fully told. Who sent them, who paid for them, and what was supposed to happen once they arrived. This is not just about weapons, it's about a hidden war fought in silence, and what Traoré's government may have uncovered but never fully revealed. This is the story of the 47 trucks, and the truth that's still missing. They didn't roll in like an invasion. There were no armored escorts, no battle cries, no uniforms, just a long, quiet convoy. 47 trucks stretching across the road like a line of patients covered in canvas tarps, moving at a steady pace marked as humanitarian aid. Nothing that would raise suspicion, except something did. Military intelligence had received a tip, not a full report, not a grand alert, just a whisper passed quietly, then verified twice. Something dangerous was moving across the southern border of Burkina Faso, not drugs, not migrants. Something heavier, something built for war. That whisper turned into a watch, and that watch turned into an operation. The trucks were stopped near the Togo-Burkina border, just hours from reaching the capital. No one resisted. The drivers complied, unaware of what they were about to be caught carrying when the first crate was opened. The mood changed. What they found was not rice, not medicine, not school supplies. It was metal cold, precise, deadly AK-47 rifles, stacked tightly like bricks. Rocket-propelled grenade launchers, packed in foam. Hand grenades, ammunition belts, plastic explosives, anti-aircraft missiles, sealed in custom boxes. Truck after truck revealed more. No duplicates, no fakes, everything real. Everything functional, and most importantly, everything operational. Estimates place the cash at over $100 million USD, in value enough to equip thousands of fighters, enough to destabilize an entire region, enough to launch a war not just within Burkina Faso, but far beyond. Some weapons were familiar. The kind found in Sahel conflicts, others were foreign, traced back to supply routes in Libya, Yemen, and Syria. They hadn't just appeared here, they were sent here, and they were close, far too close to reaching their final destination. 2 private warehouses in Ouagadougou. The government acted quickly. The convoy was paraded on national television, photos were released, public warnings were made, but then the story paused. No public list of arrested individuals, no confirmation of who financed the shipment, no update on the fate of the drivers, and no follow-up on who owned the receiving warehouses. Just silence, and silence in moments like this speaks volumes, because this wasn't a random bust. This was organized, coordinated, funded, and intended to reach someone powerful. So the question echoed across the country: if this is what we caught, what was already delivered? The public had seen the images, rows of trucks, stacks of weapons, military officers standing over crates that looked more like battlefield shipments than aid packages. But once the shock faded, people wanted answers. And for a moment it seemed like answers were coming. The Ministry of Security held a press briefing just days after. The seizure, calm, measured but direct. They confirmed everything. Yes, the trucks were intercepted. Yes, they were loaded with military-grade weapons. Yes, the operation was the result of precise intelligence and national coordination. But what came next wasn't clarity. It was caution when pressed on. Who organized the convoy? Officials paused. They didn't deny the existence of a deeper network. In fact, they hinted at it repeatedly. They described the weapons as being destined for internal destabilization. They used terms like high-level logistical coordination, transnational financing, and private complicity. Then came the phrase that sparked the most attention: former military officers and influential businessmen remain under observation. No names, no photographs, no charges filed. Instead, there were implications. Officials claimed the seized weapons were bound for warehouses in Ouagadougou, warehouses registered to front companies linked to past power circles, businesses that had thrived under previous regimes. Men who had once worn uniforms but no longer answered to any command. President Ibrahim Traoré spoke just once on the matter. A short broadcast, calm tone, firm eyes. The enemies of the revolution no longer wear uniforms. He said they wear suits, they hold contracts, they smile in public and plan in private. It wasn't a direct accusation, but it was a warning, and the nation understood it. Government-controlled broadcasters began airing segments about shadow networks. Those who, from the safety of private companies or old alliances, may have been laying the groundwork for destabilization. One official suggested the weapons were meant to spark a wave of unrest, possibly orchestrated to undermine Traoré's anti-corruption drive and foreign policy shift. Another said the scale of the operation pointed to external funding, potentially funneled through regional shell networks. But even then, no concrete accusation and no arrests publicly disclosed. The people waited to see a list, waited to see trials, waited for full accountability. But day by day, the government's statements grew shorter and less frequent, and in that silence, suspicion grew louder. Was it because the truth was too dangerous to say, or because some doors, even for a revolutionary government, are too risky to open? The state had seized the trucks, but they had not yet seized the names, and until they did, the story remained unfinished. The official story confirmed the seizure. But the real mystery began after the trucks were parked and the cameras turned away. Questions swirled not just about the weapons, but about how such an operation was even possible. How do 47 trucks filled with enough firepower to overwhelm a national defense force move across borders unnoticed? How are they registered, financed, and cleared without a single alarm triggering? Until the final moment, Burkina Faso's Ministry of Security revealed something chilling. The drivers were not insurgents. They were ordinary men. Most were from Togo, Ghana, and Burkina Faso itself, hired through logistics intermediaries to haul sealed cargo across the region. They weren't told what they were transporting. They were given documents paid in advance and instructed to meet at 3 consolidation points before entering Burkina Faso's southern region, where they would travel in one coordinated convoy. Authorities say this wasn't improvised, it was planned. Each truck carried nearly identical documentation, official stamps, customs declarations, and manifests, labeling the contents as non-perishable aid. Some of these documents were forged, others, shockingly, were likely real, possibly issued by corrupted border officials or using credentials from registered aid organizations. But even more shocking was where the convoy was going. The final destination wasn't remote. It wasn't hidden in the forest. It was Ouagadougou, the capital. According to sources inside the investigation, the weapons were meant for 2 massive warehouses in the city's industrial district. Properties registered under private holding companies, companies that on the surface dealt in commodities, import, export, and real estate. But when investigators tried to trace ownership, they hit walls. The companies had no active websites, no verified board members, no regular business activity, just large buildings, guards with no name tags, and financial histories that led to former officials and ex-military figures now living in quiet retirement or in some cases abroad. The government has not publicly confirmed this, but the trail was enough to trigger internal surveillance and quiet detentions. Still no names, no trials, no televised investigations in the trucks. They were moved quickly to an undisclosed military base outside the capital. One journalist who attempted to photograph the impounded convoy was detained, questioned, then released with a warning. The matter is sensitive. Social media filled the void. Some claimed that not all trucks were caught. Others speculated that this wasn't the first shipment, just the first one that got intercepted. Rumors began to circulate that a second convoy had already slipped through weeks earlier, using the same route. None of it confirmed, none of it denied, but one thing was clear. Whoever orchestrated this knew the system. They knew the roads, they knew the blind spots, and they knew exactly how to disappear after delivery. The trucks were seized, but the masterminds still hadn't been touched. The trucks were real, the weapons were real. But what they represented was something far more dangerous than steel, because this wasn't just an arms shipment, it was a strategy, a signal, a symptom of something deeper. And the question haunting every corridor of power in Burkina Faso became clear: who benefits from chaos, who had the motive, the means, and the network to move nearly 0 million in weaponry right into the heart of the country under the cover of aid. Some pointed outward: Burkina Faso's recent break from old alliances, especially with France, has redefined the balance of power in the region under Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The country cut ties with foreign military operations, expelled foreign troops, and shifted its defense strategies toward regional self-reliance through the AES alliance. This made friends of neighbors but enemies of those who once had unrestricted access to Burkina Faso's soil, its skies, and its minerals. Analysts say the arms convoy may have been more than a shipment. It may have been a message sent through silence, delivered in crates meant to warn sovereignty has a cost. Others pointed inward. While the government avoided naming names, their language was calculated. References to former military elites, mentions of economic actors with deep influence, hints at a domestic counter-network still alive beneath the surface of the new order. These weren't men with rifles. They were men with phones, bank accounts, diplomatic connections, old friends in security positions, and long memories, men who lost power when the previous regime fell, men who once dictated policy from behind closed doors, men who might see a new Burkina Faso, independent, defiant, self-directed as a threat to everything they built. And what if these groups, internal or external, weren't acting alone? Regional arms trafficking networks are not new, but the scale and coordination of this shipment raised a chilling possibility. This was not the first attempt. It may have been the first caught. One intelligence officer, speaking anonymously, suggested the seizure was just the tip of something larger, a supply chain, one that begins far beyond Burkina Faso's borders and ends in private warehouses near the capital. So the question isn't just who sent these weapons, it's how many are already here and who's waiting to use them. Because while the soldiers stand guard in the forests of the east, and while Burkina Faso rebuilds its alliances and its defenses, some battles are being prepared in silence. And sometimes the next attack isn't a bullet, it's a shipment, and it's already on the move. Weeks have passed since the seizure. The trucks have vanished from public view. The headlines have quieted, and the country has returned, at least on the surface, to a fragile calm. But underneath that calm lingers. The weapons are gone. But the questions remain: where exactly did the shipment originate? Who coordinated the logistics? Who signed the papers? And why has no one, not a single individual, been named or charged? Burkina Faso's government says the investigation is ongoing, that discretion is necessary, that revealing too much could compromise national security. Maybe that's true, but in a time of revolution, when the country is redefining itself, standing against foreign influence, purging corruption, and reclaiming control over its resources, silence becomes its own kind of story, and the silence around the 47 weapon trucks has been deafening. The people were shown the hardware, but not the full story. They were told this was a victory, but not who lost. They were told the threat was neutralized, but not if another one is already forming. Because this wasn't just a bust, it was a blueprint. Whoever planned this didn't act in haste. They used legal channels, they exploited real systems, customs, transport, documentation, clearance. They used front companies, known routes, and trusted drivers. This wasn't rebellion from the outside. This was infiltration from within. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because Burkina Faso's fight is no longer just in the eastern forests. It's in the cities, in the contracts, in the shadows of warehouses, and in the gaps between what is known and what is allowed to remain unknown. Some say the government is waiting for the right moment to act. Others believe the names behind this operation are too powerful to touch even now. But one thing is certain, the 47 weapon trucks were never just about weapons. They were a symbol, a test, a warning that even in a nation fighting for its independence, fighting for its future, there are still those visible or not willing to destroy everything, to reclaim what they lost as captain. Traoré once said, "The enemies of the revolution no longer wear uniforms." And perhaps that is the final truth. The next conflict may not come with sirens or explosions. It may come quietly in trucks, in documents, in sealed crates that say aid, but carry something else entirely. And unless the nation stays alert, the next shipment may not be stopped in.